Hello and welcome to the Juan podcast. If you're enjoying the show, consider signing up for the Patreon. There you get ad-free content, early access, exclusive episodes, and monthly supporter hangouts. You can find it at patreon.com/the Juan podcast. If you don't like the subscription-based models, there are other ways of supporting the show that are linked in the description. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy this episode.
They said it was forbidden. They said it was dangerous. They were right. Introducing the paranoid American Homunculus Owner's Manual. Dive into the arcane, into the hidden corners of the occult. This isn't just a comic. It's a hidden tome of supernatural power. All original artwork illustrating the groundbreaking research of Juan Ayala, one of the only living homunculologists of our time. Learn how to summon your own homunculus, an enigma wrapped in the fabric of reality itself, their power at your fingertips, their existence, your secret. Explore the mysteries of the Aristotelian, the spiritual, the Paracelsian, the Crowleyan homunculus, ancient knowledge lost to time, now unearthed in this forbidden tale. This comic book holds truths not meant for the light of day, knowledge that was buried, feared, and shunned. Are you ready to uncover the hidden? The Paranoid American Homunculus Owner's Manual, not for the faint of heart. Available now from Paranoid American. Get your copy at tjojp.com or paranoidamerican.com today.
Welcome to the One-on-One podcast with your host, Juan Ayala.
Welcome back to another episode of the Juan podcast. I'm your host as always, Juan. Make sure to follow the show on social media at the Juan podcast on all social media platforms. tjojp.com. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more of it, sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/the Juan podcast. Follow the show on Rumble, all that. If you're listening to the RSS feed, make sure to leave a 5-star review, all that good stuff. Today we're going to be talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, something that I've always referred to, but I haven't ever done an actual episode on it. And I've actually had people hit me up and always ask me if I'm being serious or not about whenever I mention the reptilian overlords. But we're going to be talking about it today with none other than the reptilian himself, Tom Thompson from the Strange Brew podcast. What's up, bro?
What's going on, man? Yes, this is also, you know me, I did literally name my hip-hop name after it, so it's also near and dear to my lizard heart, and I think it should be an interesting conversation. Like, we've covered it on Stranger Podcast in a kind of comedic way, but I think it's better to break it down in a format where people will really understand where this really comes from, because it's not just from David Icke.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's a story that, I mean, even goes back to, I did an episode a couple weeks ago on the serpent seed and the serpent war, right? The seed wars, and how Cain could have come from the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So even in biblical times, and it goes back to, we're going to bring up some stuff from Mesopotamia, the epic of, or the Aluma Elish, all these different things. Zechariah Sitchin, which one is it?
Sitchin,
right?
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, so we talk about
I've read
him.
one of his books.
So where do we start? Because as of actually, I know where to start. Let's pull up here this article, because this is a topic that's kind of been hot in the mainstream media with this lady of that MF ain't real. Okay,
I got a question. Someone at work has told me that she's missing.
No, they identified her. She supposedly. So I've seen various things. Supposedly,
so have I.
It was part of a hoax. She was identified right a day ago. All of the news outlets, right, the mainstream media is putting it out. She's been identified as a marketing executive. Supposedly she had gone on a cruise right after, and that's why she was quote unquote missing. But this is hot because she was talking about that MFer ain't real and pointing towards the back of the plane. I had a viral clip as well on Instagram and Facebook relating to this and how this could have been a ritual of some sorts, right? But it's hot because people are saying, well, maybe she saw a reptilian, maybe she saw an entity, right, that is not real. And I don't know about you, Tom, but whenever I think of reptilians, I think of aliens at the same time. And aliens right now are also a hot topic in the media because people are talking about how the government is doing the psyop. Are aliens fake and gay? Like, what's going on? And the reptilian and alien stuff kind of go hand in hand. Some would even say that the alien grays are creations of the reptilians.
Yeah, we just did a very big deep dive. I should have shout out, but yes, I am Tomcat, aka the Reptilian. I go by many aliases of Strange Brew Podcast. We do a dark comedy style into conspiracies, paranormal, and true crime, and we just covered the grays and did like a whole in-depth conversation. So if eventually you want to go to that next, I'd be more than happy to really break that down with you. But the idea that we did a whole episode, a rant episode kind of thing about like, is it a government psyop? Is it real? Because as soon as the government starts coming out and telling us stuff, it's because they have a pre-planned thing in motion, right? And the idea that we talked about that, what's his name? The guy that's now breaking, the whistleblower that is now speaking out. And it's funny because I posted on one of my Instagrams of like the whole idea of like, oh yeah, they're openly talking about the alien stuff now, but they're giving us no evidence. We're just supposed to take the credibility of these whistleblowers from the government, but then we know that they create these psychological warfares to manipulate the public consciousness. And as soon as it's out in the mainstream media, you have to question it. You can't just be like, all right, you know?
Yeah, and my bad, bro. Can you plug your stuff? Where people can find you? I completely forgot. I spaced out.
No, it's all good. Yeah, that's like I said. Strange Brew Podcast, strangebrew.podcast on Instagram is the best place to find best place. Stop doing what you're doing now to find us. And I'm on X now, Twitter. I just recently started actually paying attention to that. That is Strange Brew Cast. And then honestly, follow the YouTube. That'd be a great help. We're getting close to getting past 1,000. So I'd appreciate that. Just look up Strange Brew Podcast and you will find us. We do a lot of fun content. It's mostly a lot of just fun conversations and trying to make fun of really dark subjects because the world is dark.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, no, definitely follow him on there, subscribe. And dude, I don't know, man. I think that at least, and usually when I stumble across my words, it takes a little, it's been a long week, right? It's a Friday today. And I'm like an old diesel. It takes a little bit to warm up. So it's like, and right when we start a podcast, I mean, you and I have done plenty of episodes together. So it's like, you get used to it, right? And we just warm up. So I remember growing up, bro, to talk about the alien stuff, because that's real big right now. I remember that aliens were a thing. They're like little green men, right? Now you have the 1947 and on. Right, I've studied Crowley, and I've talked about it on the podcast where they take the responsibility of them being the ones that they introduced these alien grays, right? The modern UFO age, Grant says, that was attributed to Crowley, right? Aleister Crowley. So,
which is kind of crazy too.
Which is crazy,
channeling.
But Tom, that aside. Right, we're going to be talking about stuff that goes way deeper and further in history that you could kind of arguably say are sort of alien. So back then, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, whatever it is, that wasn't the government. That wasn't a government psyop talking about that. And Project Bluebeam, you know what I mean? So like people nowadays, like they want to jump on that. And I agree with you, bro. There isn't any evidence. But isn't that for everything, dude? I mean, a lot 100%. Of the stuff that I talk about is homunculus. I mean, I don't have a picture of a homunculus. You have have one sitting on your shoulder. You have a Bigfoot behind you, bro. There's no proof of Bigfoot except the Patterson. It's very weird footage. Exactly. It's never clear. You know what I mean?
But and that's what there's an interesting I'll say this quickly because it's something that is very controversial. But people keep seeing UFOs more and more and weird things like, and I've said this recently, and I've talked to numerous people, okay, that have recently said that they keep seeing people walk by and nobody's there out of the corner of their eye. I've been seeing it all the time at work. It's really strange. I talked to someone else I work with, and I saw him think that someone was behind him, and I was like, "What's up, bro?" And he's like, "I swear, like someone just walked behind me." And I was like, and someone else at work, 3 people at my work have said that. And then also I've talked to other people, podcasters, that have also said the same thing. So recently David Icke was on the Alex Jones show, which they never used to like see eye to eye because Alex Jones is more
recent,
physical.
Bro?
Like very recent, like 2-3 weeks ago.
Really?
And,
I'm gonna have
yeah,
to
and it
find
was
that.
really good. I think you should check it out. And it was very interesting. And it's funny because I listened to it at work, like blaring it. It's like while I was working on parts, and it's fascinating because I've always been a big fan of David Icke. Like when I've been listening to his talks since I was 16, 17. I'm now reading his books, and I don't take it all as truth. I've never taken anything as truth. I question questions. Like I always will question everything, right? And he was talking about the 5G stuff. And essentially, now that it's been on, it's connecting a bridge between different realities. And for the lower vibration entities are allowed to actually come into our reality more easily and they're more accessible to actually get to this side. And that I just thought was interesting to add, considering how much this is being propped up and pushed. But I do think you're correct, right? How often that we see this throughout history. It is kind of fascinating because these people then interpret, like even demons. I have like Christian friends, and he's like, what you believe in as aliens, I see as demons. But I posted videos on the Strange Root podcast TikTok, and they've gotten super viral of like Alex Collier talking about the reptilians and what they look like and all that stuff. And tons of people are like, they're demons, man. They're interdimensional demons. And I'm like, what would come first? I always ask that question. What would come first? Would it be aliens, the idea of aliens, or demons? It would be aliens because demons was only a word in a thing that they created out of what they saw, or it felt or whatever.
I agree with you on that. I get exactly what you're talking about. But I mean, even the word alien you could say the same thing for that. All right. Like
Yeah.
there was never anything. It was something. And it's funny you bring up the idea of seeing things in your peripheral, because I had that happen to me today, actually.
Weird.
Dude, I was in my truck, I was moving the car seats around, and mind you, I have neighbors that I talk to and stuff like that, and we hang out. So for a second, I had my back towards the outside of the door, and I was trying to hook everything up, and I could have swore, dude, that my neighbor, right? I was like, oh, look, my neighbor is coming up to talk to me or whatever. I'm outside putting the car seat in, and then I turn around, and there was nobody there, bro. Like, but I could have swore I saw something on the side of my. But I've had that happen before, because I feel like when you research, like things that I research, I've been told that they can open up portals, right? And things can sometimes peek their little heads in, right, if you will, like little gremlins. And I mean, it's like the shadows that you always see at the edge of a campfire where you can't really put your finger on it, but it's kind of there. And I'm a believer, bro, that talking about this 5G bridge, well, I believe that there are realities interlaid one on top of another. Like that's
what I think too. Yeah, I think that too. There's supposed to be 600 different dimensions, according to some theorists, that correspond with Earth at the exact same time. 600. Imagine what exists beyond even that, right? And that's why I'm like, I joke about the flat Earth stuff on our show, to be like, if it is possible by any way, it doesn't negate the fact that aliens could exist, because people are so hardcore into that, where I'm like, there's interdimensional levels of our reality. And I've told you this many times. I think Hollow Earth is very possible, but I also think we probably live in a simulation. Like, I don't think this is real as we think it is. And the amount of mushrooms I don't know what reality is anymore. And I said this on my show recently, is like, I was sitting there tripping on a very high dose, and I was trying to, because fractals, you'll see like these translucent objects coming towards you and around you, and they're in tribal patterns and stuff that you can't describe. And I've tried to look through them, and I swear I saw like faces of like aliens type looking faces. I'm trying to stare through the fractals, and I was thinking about me when I used to use Ouija boards, and I was like kind of into the occult stuff, and I was telling them, like, you can't be in my surrounding anymore. I am like, because I'm getting healthier and better and smarter, and mushrooms have fixed my head in numerous ways. And I was staring through the fractals, and I saw like faces and stuff. It's crazy.
You're letting them know who's the boss now, Tom. I'm the boss.
I'm the boss.
Be around me. You can't be around me anymore.
Even like we were doing a movie out back last week, and I was just like tripping hardcore. And like, it's so dark. I can see all these weird patterns and stuff like that, but I can't see like where my water bottle is, because you can't see grass anymore. It's just like all these like patterns and.
It's a blob.
Yeah, it's wild.
So. Okay, so the idea that something exists outside of our reality. Now, we can start diving a little bit deeper into this into this theory, this hypothesis, because the idea is, now you have various camps, similar to how you have various, there's only 44,000 denominations of Christianity. There is the Bigfoot people who think it's blood and bone. You have the Bigfoot people who think it's interdimensional. And you have the alien people who think it's real. You got the people who think it's fake and gay. Then you have the people who think that they're interdimensional. And right. So let's tackle it. Let's play game with all the ideas. Now, we're probably going to be focusing on Dave. I got some David Icke stuff because obviously he's like the reptilian daddy, right? If you will, he's the one that really popularized it. So we might talk about him, but the idea that things exist either interdimensionally, right, across from our dimension, or in these in-between worlds, whatever it may be, or how some people have said they come from Hollow Earth, right? From inside. They've already been here, okay? They're already here. Or the idea that we evolved from these beings.
Yeah,
okay?
that's what's that's the whole thing with the grays too. Are we grays in the future? Like stuff like that. And it's like, that's the idea, is like supposedly the negative, we'll get into it, but that there's the ones from Dracus Ocanus in Orion's belt, and they're like a warrior breed of the hierarchy and the structure of like royalty within our world. And then you have ones that are supposed to be Hollow Earth that are actually kind of more nice. They don't necessarily like us, but they don't want us on this planet, but they kind of have to deal with it. And they've existed here for eons. But who knows?
So, reptilians, reptoids, archons, reptiloids, saurians, draconians, lizard people, right? And the gist of the theory is, right, according to David Icke, that these shape-shifting reptilian aliens control Earth by taking on human form and gaining political power to manipulate human societies. Now, whenever I've used the reptilian overlords in any sense of the word, I've always talked about it. Now, I have the possibility open. I'll leave the possibilities open to that there is some sort of reptilian shape-shifting species, okay? But when I refer to it as, I'm referring it to these metaphysical, spiritual entities, right? Or forces, if we would. Let's not even call them entities. Let's say that they're just forces that are here holding you back. But here's the thing, that we can trace back all the presidents to one common ancestor. Now, what does that mean? That would mean that they're all related to what? One bloodline. So that they come from this royal bloodline. We know that the elites, they interbreed within their bloodlines to keep them pure, right? We have all these ideas. So that's the reality of things. That's the reality. Now, if they are shape-shifting lizards, that can be a whole other thing, but it kind of rides on that line, right? And it's like, I believe, because also you have David Icke, who he said, maybe we are the reptilians, or maybe we are these entities. You have people like Crowley talking about how we are the Goetia, right? The Goetia exists within our minds. And even Icke says, even if there wasn't reptilians or these entities, we would create them, right? Through our minds. Okay. So there's this idea. And again, we can go a lot of places from here, but let's start off with one of my favorites. I recently did a presentation on Illuminati worms and the idea of Yaldabaoth, the Gnostic demiurge, which Plato introduced that idea, and how he's always portrayed as a lion-headed serpent. Well, serpents and reptilians, you could kind of sort of make the connection there, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because like, as long as humanity has kept records and records have existed, legends of serpent races have persisted. Like, these myths tell of mysterious race of superhuman reptilian beings who descend from the heavens to participate in creating humankind, who teach us the sciences and maybe in part like forbidden knowledge, impose social order, and breed with us and watch over our development. And that's why I wanted to point out, just to kind of bring this in, is the whole like the serpent-like being were in like so many different cultures. Ancient gods, culture spread from Sumeria to to Babylon, to India, to China, to Japan, Mexico, Central America. It's always, they've been worshiping like reptilian style gods for as long as we understand.
I have a list here. Look at,
That's in the
look at
Smithsonian, is it not?
That's a sexy ass reptilianoid.
Look at him do his strut like he's Bigfoot. That's like in the Smithsonian, isn't it? Is the idea that like if the Big Bang never happened. I thought that was the hypothesis.
So here's an interesting one, because in my studies of the Illuminati worms, the Mac Daddy of the theory of evolution, Charles
That's
Darwin,
so strange.
he actually studied worms, bro. And the word worms
so
is
weird.
actually interchangeable with serpent, snake,
I heard that too.
worm, dragon. Again, serpent,
Yeah.
like this idea of a reptilian. And Charles Darwin, he studied worms. So here's a picture. This is from 1882, showing that man came from worm. And then it says here, man is but a worm. So we have here this evolution of man
Some are, I would say.
into like this monkey. And then it goes down and it evolves into a man. But if you really think about it, a sperm is kind of like a
Weird.
little worm, right?
Yeah.
So we have this
That is
idea.
weird, dude.
He studied worms for 39 years. And he says, worms, quote, have played a more important part in the history of the world than most persons would at first suppose. So what did this guy know? Because, right, the modern day theory
It's a long
is that
time to study worms.
that's a long time to study worms,
know?
right? That's a long time. So maybe he was onto something, but I just thought that was interesting that again, how you're saying all these depictions all throughout history that have been documented, they've always shown these serpent-like entities, right? The serpent in the Garden of Eden. You have certain Gnostics that worship the serpent in the garden. They revered the serpent in the garden as the true Messiah. Now, for all those screaming right now, no, that's blasphemy. That's fine. Again, if you want to listen to this episode, leave your shoes at the door, suspend your disbelief, and just hang out with us in here. We're going to be getting heretical. We're going to getting blasphemous. Again, we're just kicking around ideas, having a good time. Okay, so
Exactly. I don't know what to believe. This world is so fucked up, dude.
I don't know what to believe either. You have the Naga people, right? These king cobras in Hindu mythology. You have the Nomos, right, from the West.
Yeah, Sobek too.
West
I feel
Mali.
like we get to that too at some point.
The Dragon Kings also. And also, I was listening to... Who was I listening to? I think it might have been Ancient Aliens. Because it's right. What is it? Ancient astronaut theorists believe
That's wild ass hair, bro.
that China comes from Qin, which was supposedly this dragon emperor or something or other.
Yep. I have that
right?
in my notes down the road. I feel like because I have a lot of stuff breaking down of like where a lot of the stuff comes from. Because even like Sumer meaning land of the guardians, Babylon meaning gate of gods, and it's like it's kind of weird considering they're always worshiping some sort of like
Some sort of thing.
Quetzalcoatl,
But
all
check,
these things.
yeah, Quetzalcoatl, right? The feathered serpent. But check this out, because I had an idea that I was premiering an episode today, and Thomas Paranoid American, he said that we attribute such a large part of history to small things that we find, like artifacts. We paint entire pictures around artifacts, right? Like we have this little figurine, for example, these figurines here, which are very interesting, that date back from, if you want to believe mainstream history, 5900 BC to 4000 BC. So this goes back a long time, okay? And very weird depiction. They say that it's a sort of reptilian entity holding a baby. One of them is also
that one's
feeding a
holding
baby.
something.
It's a little baby. It's like a chameleon looking baby
Yeah, it is.
larva
That's
thing.
weird.
So he proposed the idea of like, hey, if let's say 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years from now, when everything has been obliterated and there is nothing left, and they're finding our figurines of Captain America, Batman, Superman, are those archaeologists going to be like, damn, this was a religion?
There was a man that was a bat, and he saved.
This was a religion. They worship the Batman. There's story. There's what are these comic books? There's comic books about this guy. So what I'm getting at is that what if the stuff that we're seeing about all these gods and all these demigods and all Hercules and Zeus, what if that was the superhero version, not reality, but a superhero version in stories for those people, but yet we paint a picture of like, they were worshiping these things, they were doing all these things, but what if it was just like fan fiction? Again,
That's an
thinking outside
interesting
the box.
point. who is the rapper? Maybe it was Lupe Fiasco. I can't remember who it was. There's a rapper that said in a line talking about essentially that when in the future, when they see a building like the White House, they might think it's a church. Like they won't understand what, like, if they don't have the right interpretations and understanding of what it actually is, you could throw that wall and see if it sticks and be like, oh, it's a church. That's where they worshipped their gods. And then it's like a picture of George Bush or some, you know what I mean? He's a reptile.
So again, just thinking outside the box, because it just makes you think that would account for like these supernatural powers that they give these things, and just the mythology and the lore behind them.
Yeah.
So again, we have the figurines from, I believe these are Mesopotamian, if I'm not, they're called the Ubaid or Ubad, right? This is found in Iraq, Middle East. And it's just very interesting because we can look at it all day, and it's like looking at clouds. You see one thing, I see another. So but what a weird depiction, right? And this is what I love about history, because when it comes to history, I often wonder, like, if it was BS, then why even make it a thing? You know what I mean? Like, why?
I don't know how to trust anything throughout history, and people that are even think they know what even happened in World War I and II truly don't. And like, it's just kind of fascinating when people, they are kind of sold to one narrative, but obviously has been preached throughout in these indoctrination systems that we call schools. So it's kind of interesting. Check this out. This is kind of interesting. Among the thousands of clay tablets that have been recovered and translating back the earliest records of history that we have, supposedly, are documents that records events dating back to 240,000 years ago. One of these is the Sumerian king list that tells a story of the god Anu, the chief god of an extraterrestrial race called the Anunnaki, and his sons Enki and
Enlil, bro.
Enlil, bro. It sounds like a rapper nowadays. Yeah. It is clear that the text and illustrations left by the Sumerians that at least some of the gods, including Enki, also known as Ira, were reptilian in appearance. And it is Enki who gave the first people the fruit from the tree of knowledge, who later saved humanity by warning of a Noah-like figure of the great flood. And these stories are so similar to the Old Testament that one can conclude that the Old Testament authors borrowed heavily from them. Of course they did. In the Sumerian tale, Enki is given a task creating a worker force to help the Anunnaki till the soil and mine the ore which came from the earth. This he does through these trial and error in the process of creating strange creatures. And there's so many movies and stuff that is drip fed to us that has to do with that. And even it kind of relate to the homunculus stuff and all these things of creating beings to help you and serve you. You know what I mean? It's
no, absolutely. And
fucking weird, man.
Some people would say that no, they did not copy, right? That the Old Testament did not copy from these earth. And again, I don't know how that works, but again, that's the word on the street.
I work with a guy that thinks that the earth is only 6,000 years old. And I'm like, I don't know, man.
I saw this documentary on Netflix about the people that they dated back. I think it was like 170, a crazy amount of numbers. It's called the Cave of Bones, and I think it was
we were starting to watch that. It's interesting.
Was it 100 and something thousand years or 400 and something thousand? Like these little hominids. Crazy. Yeah, something crazy.
My fiance is actually into that. She started watching it. I was researching and stuff, and I was like, this is interesting, but I always am like, I never know why they show this on Netflix.
it's going back to this idea of piecing together. In that show, they hypothesized about how they were, their religious activities, their burial activity. I'm like, bro, there's only so much how you're saying. We're trusting the word of other people that they're interpreting it, and right, it's like when you're looking at clouds, you see one thing, I see another, and you have people who, when it comes to art, right, symbolism, it's such a powerful thing, but also such a thing that's open for interpretation. And do you 100%. Truly really know what that artist was trying to convey with that one painting, with that one symbol? And
somebody stares at it, banana taped to a wall, and they're like, wow, that's amazing.
And even me, I've read papers and articles and all these different things of art historians, and they'll be able to extract things from that piece of artwork that is amazing. And I go, I would have never even thought about that. Again, maybe that's why they're the professional and I'm not. But the idea that it's such a vast, there's so much room for interpretation. How are
Yeah.
we ever supposed to come
Have
together?
you ever talked about Hieronymus Bosch?
I've referenced him here and there. Yeah, the trippy.
That would be a
artwork.
fascinating episode because that guy's art is wild.
Yeah.
Like the
yeah.
Heavenly Earths or whatever, the Delights.
Mhm.
One I have a depiction. It feels like a real painting. It's not though. Of like his, he has one where it's his depiction of hell, and it's like
Yeah.
just there's so many things you could just stare, especially on mushrooms, like stare and find all these weird little things in it. That's like crazy that people can create art like that. Now it's the way it is today, where it's art is not art anymore.
So
Hey, I could do it.
in mythology, right? Let's talk about the reptilian humanoids. We have Boreas, which the Greek god of the cold north wind, described by Pausanias as a wingman, sometimes with serpents instead of feet. So again, that's like kind of like an Abraxas looking person thing. We have Cecrops the first, the mythical first king of Athens, was half man, half snake. Shock, the Mayan civilization rain god, depicted in iconography with a human body showing reptilian or amphibian scales and with a non-human head, evincing fangs and a long nose. Dragon kings from Chinese mythology, Jin and Islamic
Long
mythology.
nose. Now you're getting into some dangerous
So-
territory.
Sometimes alternate between human and serpentine forms. We have Echidna, the wife of Typhon in Greek mythology, was half woman, half snake. So shout out to all the women.
Interpretations.
Yeah, so many different, right? Nagas, serpent, Typhon, Xeon. So now the Anunnaki story. That's an interesting one, right? Because it takes on the serpent in the Garden of Eden. I mentioned earlier the Serpent Wars, and I was listening to the David Icke and Credo Mutwa interview that he did, and he was essentially talking about the the Anunnaki story of creation. That's essentially what it was. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of similarities. Now, this is what's interesting about it because it spans throughout various cultures, similar entities, just with different names. Because how you mentioned earlier at the beginning, you're going to name something based on what you interpret it as. So something that you don't know, oh, that's demonic. Well, you just coined a term or a word. You know, what actually was it? It could have been anything else. You have people who talk about how aliens aren't even real, and it's all about the Aryans, right? And I always make the joke, holy shit, it's the Aryans. So it's like maybe somebody somebody didn't interpret it right. And right, because supposedly the L and the R or whatever I think are interchangeable or something or other.
When we did our reptilian episode, I talked about how supposedly white people are like more like you can, if you look at it like psychologically, we're more or less psychopaths and and that's why throughout history they've like supposedly taken over, and it's a fascinating thing because it's supposed to be a way that these reptilians can manipulate is easily through certain races and breeds. Like I've said since I've always believed that the why it makes us different, like black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, whatever you are, Asian, is because we just have different DNAs in us from other aliens and stuff like that. I've always thought that. It's just there's some weird. Let me break down this for you because this is fairly interesting. Other than ancient texts that bear this disturbing conclusion about the fact that this has happened and that our creation is from some sort of serpent god creature, in 1945 in a small town of Egypt, a clay jar was found bearing the ancient scrolls similar to the Dead Sea Scrolls. These are the Nag Hammadi text, named after the town where they were found. This tells of the story of human creation in this way. The bodies of Adam and Eve were overlain with a horny skin, that was bright as daylight, like a luminous garment. That's very weird. Thus, it seemed they didn't need clothing. Further, these texts tell a different story about the tree of knowledge, and is told in Genesis. She took some of its fruit and ate. She gave it to her husband also. Then their minds opened. For when they ate, the light of knowledge shone for them. When they saw their makers, they loathed them, since they were in beastly form. They understood very much. And I still have more on this, but that's interesting because there's theories like the idea that, you know, and what the Luciferians and stuff believe is that maybe the reptilians are the good guys and stuff like that, that Satan was actually showing people knowledge. You know, there's even a Beast 1333 line where it's like they rather you worship Jesus, but Lucifer means light and stuff like that. So there's that idea is very fascinating. And then in other Jewish documents known as the Haggadah, it is made clear that the serpent was not merely a snake. Among the animals, the serpent was notable. Of all of them, he had the most excellent qualities, in some of which he resembled a man. Like a man, he stood upright on 2 feet in height and is equal to that of a camel. His superior mental gifts caused him to become an infidel, and likewise explains his envy of man. In a punishment for tempting Eve, God said, "I create you to be king over the animals, but you were not satisfied. I created you upright posture, therefore you shall go upon your belly." It's like these weird interpretations, right? And this legend implies that Enki possessed a highly advanced technology that included the capability to genetically alter the indigenous species. Using a mysterious protest called a clay-like substance, he would able to bind upon the image of gods, indicating that Enki used the Anunnaki genes to create a hybrid species that implies that maybe early humans maybe had reptilian appearance. That shit is fascinating. I didn't even know that before I started researching. And I've heard stuff, but not like that, like explained.
Do you have the source on that? Which book of the Nag Hammadi that text came from? Because it said what they put on a suit of what, of light.
Listen to this. That's what's fascinating. So it said that they put on like a translucent, like a horny skin. So that's kind of like a reptilian skin kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And was bright. It was bright as daylight. So it was like so bright that you'd have to hide your eyes from it or something. And it was luminous. It's very weird, man.
Yeah. And again, I mean, there's talks of the aura that one possesses, the etheric body.
Yeah.
And there's various theosophical depictions of what that looks like, but I've never seen that one that you're talking about. And again, I know there's various texts within that library, right? So it's a whole bunch of different things, but that's a really interesting find there that you did.
We went to an alien conference like a couple of years ago, and that's when a guy knew stuff that he couldn't have known. Like this site guy, I don't know, he knew stuff about Chelsea, my fiance. He couldn't have known this stuff. I don't know. And Billy does not believe in psychics at all.
He touched your hand.
I know. He told me I had a monkey on my back, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice," because I'm addicted.
You told me that story like 3 million times, bro.
I know. And then but when we were there was a woman doing pictures. I don't know what the she had, and she could supposedly take a picture of your aura. That's what I mentioned that because it was like, and Chelsea got one done, and I was like, that could just been the resolution image, and it's like, how do you even know that? How she even do it? Like
we covered that lady that could take interdimensional pictures. What was her name? Do you remember that she would take pictures?
Oh, Stella. Yeah, someone gave us 8 in that episode.
Huh?
Stella Langsing or something like that. So
something
I can't
like
remember. Someone gave us some. Something we said it offended somebody. I just remember reading.
Who cares?
Oh my god, shut up.
So this idea of peering into other realms, right? So that was a really interesting find, and that's the thing about the Gnostic texts, that they're unfiltered through the Roman lens, and the idea 100%. that Cain came from the serpent, how I mentioned earlier. There are some Gnostics that worship the serpent, right? The brazen serpent, the serpent on the cross, etc., etc. Again, these are, quote unquote heretical beliefs, but mind you, you're probably going to hell in somebody else's religion and vice versa. So it's like, what are you going to believe?
Manifestation of the mind. No Bible references hell.
Now, the idea of, you have Helena Blavatsky also talking about the dragon men that are in, I think it was Agartha within the Hollow Earth. You have so I tried tracing back kind of like where this idea could have gone mainstream, and Conan the Barbarian has some sort of reptilian-esque figures in that, and that was in 1930.
In the movie?
The show.
The original show.
Robert E. Howard, right? And he is the one that they attribute to, I believe they called it sword and sorcery genre. So he's the father of that. And it's like, mind you, this was, although a Conan novel was nearly published in 1934, Howard's stories were never collected during his lifetime. The main outlet for his stories was Weird Tales, where Howard created Conan the Barbarian. So again, how you mentioned this idea of creating homunculus, and whenever you look at a character or an actor, right, they're always created by, right? So even if it's a sort of egregore or something, and if you think about all these reptilian stories, a lot of them involve the creation of humans. Okay, so Prometheus, you have the
caduceus, man, and our the serpent, the caduceus, the medical symbol with our two serpents that weave into a double helix like our DNA. Fucking weird.
And this idea, right, referencing the Anunnaki, the story goes that they created man, a Homo sapien, and this is the part that's like, if these entities are as powerful as they are, why would they need our help, right? If they're so powerful, no, they needed our help to mine for gold. Like,
I know, that's why it is kind of weird. Or did they need us for some reason to balance out their karma or something? I don't know. It's kind of fascinating because, like, or they were just like, they wanted to be overlords.
Ike says that the Anunnaki reptoids desired to mine monoatomic gold. This mineral supposedly has the ability to increase the carrying capacity of the nervous system by 10,000 times, and so when ingested, the Anunnaki would be able to process vast amounts of information and accelerate trans-dimensional travel. Bro,
that's weird. I know one of my homies that bring it on the podcast recently, he puts a piece of silver in his water and drinks his water with a piece of silver in it.
Hey, dude, I mean, the alchemists were drinking mercury and making concoctions trying to make the elixir of life. I mean, the monatomic gold, people would drink that and eat gold. I mean, that's an actual thing. It's supposed to be helps with digestion and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, and you need the minerals, right? You need the minerals in the water and all that stuff. So we have Conan the Barbarian.
I've started taking iodine. I was trying to get off Alex Jones' site, but I had to find other means because he's always sold out, even though he tries to sell it all the time.
So we have Conan the Barbarian with some sort of reptilians in here. Let me see if I can find a picture of these.
Yeah. I can break down something for you about these emerald tablets. That seems pretty interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the reptilians and other entities which are manipulating our world by possessing human bodies operate in frequencies between the third and fourth densities. These are referred to as hidden spaces, planes unknown to man. And apparently in the ancient emerald tablets, it is here that they police our vibrational prison. Because I always said it seems like we're in a prison planet, and seek to addict and restrict us to dense physical senses. As you see with a lot of stuff that goes on in a certain community where they're dominated by their root chakra, by their sexuality and stuff, and being addicted to sex and stuff like that. And do mushrooms, you won't be addicted to this world has once far less dense than it is today. It was less dense in previous years, whatever, and fall down the frequencies caused by the manipulation of the incarnate consciousness and the DNA infiltration, as you were kind of just alluding to, has made it so much more difficult to maintain this multi-dimensional connection while in the physical form, which is fascinating. We are here in a cycle of change when the vibration of this world will be raised out of our dense physicality and return to where it once was. In doing so, the reptilians' ability to manipulate our physical form will be removed, and this is why they're in so much panic at this time to prevent the shift from happening and opening the vibrational prison door. The reptilians and other manipulating entities exist only just outside the frequency range. You only see 10% of reality, maybe even less, and they chose Earth for this infiltration because it mostly resembles the vibrations locations that they originate from. And they're addicted supposedly to the dense physical world and the sensation that it offers, and they have no desire to advance higher. And even Alex Collier, there's a fascinating interview if anyone's like interested. Look up Alex Collier, the 1994 interview, because he talks about that and how some reptilians don't, like some species of reptilians don't even know where they come from. Oh, weird. I've seen that image before. That's wild that was in. Is that from the movie?
So this is 1982.
Well, that was the first titties I've ever seen, I think, was on the I was either Titanic or the Conan the Barbarian at the beginning. That's
and
a creepy image, though.
there are these reptilian shapeshifters in that.
And
again,
they shapeshift. Look, he's down there. I haven't seen this movie in a while. I want to rewatch it.
yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out.
Weird,
again.
man. They put that shit in an 80s movie, and especially when V was coming out, all this stuff that was
Look at his eyes, bro.
weird.
Shapeshifting.
Whoa, I did not even pay it. Like, that's wild. I haven't seen these movies in years, so that's like kind of interesting that I remember that character, but I don't remember him shapeshifting.
Yeah, so then look at this guy, bro. This guy's strutting it, dude.
That's wild.
Yeah,
that's
baby,
crazy.
yeah.
I didn't know, because you think about V, like, and we'll get to that later of the modern day influences and stuff like that.
Is that Kanye West?
Yeah, I know. Man, in this, what was he wearing with those like football shoulder pads?
Yeah.
He's just a bizarre guy if it's him.
The idea of this being some sort of holographic prison, et cetera, that's again very Platonic, very Gnostic in thought, where the Platonists, they believe that the source, the one, the monad, whatever, emanates out reality, and whatever we're perceiving right now is an emanation of a more divine thing.
Yeah, it's like the law of one stuff. Yeah.
It dehumanizes this realm, this dimension. And I mean, I've always made the joke that Christians are they don't enjoy this life worrying about the next life, right? They're preparing so much for the next life that they
don't, like Egyptians.
Yeah, they would focus their entire lifetime around death and around preparing for death.
Yeah.
Because some cultures, bro, during Hellenistic times, sometimes they would put the death date before the birth date. So it'd be, 2055 or whatever, and then 1994, an example. And
Weird.
People would be like, wait, why are they doing that? And the reasoning behind that was because they believed that life started at death. So the real journey started at when they would pass on to the next realm. Because, we've all, growing up,
just jumping off cliffs and
well, again, that's a whole other ordeal because that's heretical. But the idea that once you pass on and leave this vessel that we're in, you enter another reality, another dimension. And the idea that these entities want to keep us in prison here, that it gets very interesting, right? Because according to David Icke, they exist on the fourth dimension. So it's
like a low vibration almost, like it's.
So right here, this mineral supposedly had the ability to increase the carrying capacity of the nervous system. So I talked about the monatomic gold. Icke also postulates that the Anunnaki live off human fear and anxiety. They are, in a sense, emotional vampires. Down through the ages, Icke believes such Anunnaki have initiated numerous blood rituals and human sacrifices. During these rituals, human victims release large amounts of negative energy, which is then absorbed by the Anunnaki waiting in the fourth dimension. Their
that's what
preferred
they say
stomping.
about adrenochrome.
So here's
they're
the thing.
hallucinating and seeing entities and stuff when they take adrenochrome.
Well, here's the thing about that. It's like these people, and by these people I'm talking about like Icke, a lot of people will take the term Illuminati, or like right here he's using Anunnaki, the term Illuminati or Anunnaki as like this blanket term for all secret societies, all reptilian-esque people, right? The lizard people, like, the Illuminati. And it's like they're encapsulating the Merovingians, all these different bloodlines, the Habsburgs, whatever you want to call them, all into one. Now they could possibly all be the same thing, back again to what we talked about at the beginning, where things change name depending on who's observing it, what time in what era and time it is, et cetera, et cetera. So that could possibly be a thing. And maybe even these bloodlines within themselves can have wars with each other, which
there's always warring factions, and that's what people are like, we came in killed all the indigenous, which is true, but they're also warring with each other constantly, and it's kind of crazy too, because he's bringing up that point, right? This whole idea, because this was so deep that we're gonna get into a lot of stuff on this episode, but even on for further even Strange Brew episodes, you were like Aaron's good. He knows he loves conspiracies. He just read David Icke's 9/11 book, and we were talking about I was like, I want to do an episode with the 13 bloodlines, because it is there's so much to it more than people understand of where this connection. They're like, we're connected to Jesus, but it's probably something a lot more darker, and that's why they think that they have the right to rule because of their blood. It's very interesting that people think they have the right to
real
rule other
quick,
people.
Tom,
Yeah.
that in the I think it's the Nag Hammadi or the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the two.
Yeah.
In the Gospel of Judas, and I'm not sure if that's the one with the shape-shifting Jesus, but there's a story that the reason, check this out, the reason that Judas kissed Christ, right, when he was being taken to identify him, was because the reason he needed to identify him was because he was a shapeshifter. So in the Gospel of Judas, right, we're speaking about interdimensional entities, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is heretical. So the idea that Jesus in that story despised the 12 the other disciples, and the one that he confided in was Judas. So again, they're taking these same stories that we've heard about and they're inverting them on their head.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in that story, Judas confronts Jesus and tells him, I know where you come from. You are from, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, you come from the name that the name I can't utter, something other, Barbelo, et cetera, et cetera.
Voldemort. Just kidding.
And I'm paraphrasing, but he talks about Barbelo, and Jesus refers to, right, the disciples go, hey, where'd you go? Right, you pieced out on us for a while. Like, where were you? And he pretty much tells them, like, I was at a better time. I was somewhere else that I wanted to be. So almost like, you guys are too lame to hang out with. I was in another dimension just hanging out with whoever. And Judas looks at him and goes, I know where you come from. I can't utter the name, but something Barbara.
That's why it always fascinates me about like people like Charles Manson. Some of the that he said, I don't exist in this physical world. I don't exist in this reality that you exist in. He said like crazy shit like that all the time, where he's like, I don't come from here. I don't exist in this reality. I don't live in this physical form. And like, we'll eventually like be doing it's such a huge topic. Charles Manson's massive. So it's going to be like, I never like doing 2 parts, but it has to be at least 2 or 3 parts. But it's like, because there's some of these people that we see throughout history that I believe were manipulated by, and I've said this on my show too, you were alluding to, is like, I also say like dark entities now, or dark beings, whatever they are, because I'm not going to just like close the box around just the reptilians.
We don't know is the point.
Yeah. That weirdo dude that told me I had a monkey on my back, the psychic, he was like, I remember him saying, like, I was talking about the reptilians. This is like so long ago. I was like early 20s talking about this. And then he's like, I'm honing into a darker force. And I was like, something more sinister. And I was like, all right,
he's
buddy.
like, and the forces are saying that the forces are telling me that you're gay, Tom. The forces, they have spoken.
Now.
The entities have spoken, and they say that you're gay.
Funny.
So
I guess I gotta like do that meme where I start putting on clown makeup, but instead it's like a wig and a makeup. Man,
oh, man.
I got some stuff if you want to break down like and start kind of getting into some of the appearances of these.
So
are actually,
real quick, let me sum up so we have these depictions, right? We have Conan the Barbarian, and also we have Carl Sagan.
Oh yeah,
who talked about the R complex, which essentially what it is, it comes from this guy's theory. Let me pull it up here.
I just want to mention it because I pulled down some of this. It's like when you were talking about the hierarchies, and obviously the rulers have maintained their bloodline through like incest and these so-called royal families. It is interesting because David does point out to all 43 presidents in the United States were related, and 33 of the presidents can be traced their bloodline back to the bloodline of Charlemagne. It's like just fascinating.
That's true. That's true. So in the 1960s, Dr. MacLean, or it's spelled MacLean, but so you pronounce it MacLean, enlarged his theory to address the human brain's overall structure and divided its evolution into 3 parts. An idea he termed the triune brain. In addition to identifying the limbic system, he pointed to a more primitive brain called the R complex, related to reptiles, which controls basic functions like muscle movement and breathing. The third part of the neocortex controls speech and reasoning and is the most recent evolutionary arrival. Now, this also plays into the more animalistic side of people, their urges, and supposedly we have this relationship with reptiles. That's why they say the reptilian side of your brain.
Well, they had the reptilian brain, which is formed on top of a mammalian brain, which is formed on top of a human brain. Like, and I've said that to people, and they think I'm crazy.
Yeah. No, this is Carl Sagan talking about this, right? This is 19. I think this is 19.
I remember saying that to Billy, and Billy's like, "What are you talking about, reptile?" And I was like, "No, man." I was like, even like stupid people like Obama have said that. It's like a reverse, like to our like reptilian brain. You have mainstream people saying this.
So the book is called The Dragons of Eden by Carl Sagan, Speculations on the Evolution of Human Intelligence, and it was published in 1977. So again, you guys can check that book out. And again, these are all guys, they're shady guys, right? That they're trying to push this Charles Darwin idea of evolution. And I mentioned that Charles Darwin was talking about maybe perhaps we came from a worm, right? What was he hinting at? Maybe he was hinting at, right? Worm is also Wyrum or whatever, like the little dragon looking things, right? Serpent. So who knows what he was hinting at, but he studied worms for 39 years. And I quoted at the beginning.
So weird.
It's bizarre, like, right?
39 years. I love worms, man. I eat them with my breakfast. So strange. Keep going. I was like, I got something to break down eventually.
No, go ahead.
Fairly long. Okay, this is fairly long, but this is like actually like pretty interesting information. So where was I? So the Alpha Draconis, like the Alpha Draconian kind of like, they're supposed to be the oldest race of the reptilians in our galaxy. It's so I put on the StreamYard has that new feature where it can like make your features look. I clicked it. Now every time I get close to the camera, my face like smooths.
What?
It's like look, watch. Okay, I'll go back here. Look, it looks normal. Watch. Changes my face. Weird. So they're the oldest race in our galaxy. There are, in fact, the only genetic line of their existence that does not exist. When we talk about that, there's supposed to be some of them are extinct, and they have been found remnants of others that came before they were extinct. Most of the reptilian civilizations we know today are in booties. The Orion and Capella are all genetically, booties. Nice. Are manipulated half-breeds of the original race, which is fascinating because supposedly the race that we know of today that is maybe manipulating our society is not the original race of the Alpha Draconians, which is kind of interesting. And they're from the Sharaka race. CIA.
But that would make sense, Thomas, that the idea that in all these stories, they always make a prototype, right? Like, oh, let's make the prototype. This prototype, right, can't have sexual relations, and then they make another one. Like, from,
but then it's like the idea of the AI, right? Is that what Because there's so much the AI stuff fascinates me and it scares the shit out of me at the same time. But it's this thing of like they create better versions of themselves so they can implant their consciousness. Okay, weird. So they supposed to be staying 8 to 20 feet tall. That is 18 to 25 feet tall. That's massive. That's like the giant stories, which eventually, like, if you ever want to cover that stuff, I'd like love to talk about giants and can weigh up to 2,500 pounds. That's wild. That's very heavy. They have black, leathery, brown, scale bellies. They have nice belly. They have multiple abdomens. They have whiskers around their chin and jawline. That's strange. They have mating claw. And multiple tongues. So when we're talking, I will get to a little bit of it.
Grab my strong hand.
It's like this, and then you lick it and you have to it and stuff. Because we'll on the episode we did, and of course, like Billy was making fun of it, and like it was like I kind of believe in this stuff, and then he just doesn't want to believe it. He just chooses not to. And we were talking. There's the reptilian sex wars that I do have a little bit about, and it's fascinating because supposedly reptilians have a dick that deattaches and they can turn into a sword and they fight each other.
Dude, what? That's awesome.
Yeah, is that wild? I found this on some weird obscure site of this psychic lady that supposedly has like she connects with other beings, and so over time, the reptilians, the women were being raped. So our word so often. So they created a vagina dentile or something like that, where it's like
Yeah.
teeth.
Mhm.
So they can't have that happen to them, right? And then so they would engage in these wars over women. It's fascinating shit. I have a little bit of it on it later. So supposedly they lay eggs, what is called a battle of hormone is used to accelerate the birth process. This is why ancestral females do not participate in these wars. So it's the sex war thing, because if they did, they wouldn't be anyone there to lay the eggs. They also have been there to secrete this hormone. Stronger young females were expected to defeat and kill the weaker leaders in ritual combat, which is, if you look at our culture, it's just a fascinating thing if this holds any truth at all. And the Sirika, Chaka, whatever you want to call
What's
them.
the source on this, bro? Is it source Trust Me, bro, or
Yeah, pretty much. I got this part from Bibliotheca Palladians, so like, who knows if they're
nice.
and it is, some of it's from David Icke, some of it's from other researchers. I can't remember the one guy's name, but the Saraka is a race ruled and managed by the genetic lineage, and the genetic lineage also follows the mother. And because you always know who the mother is, you don't always know who the father is. In this particular line, the gals have the say. So the women got the men by the balls, or the coeca, wherever the reptilians have. Ruled by the monarchy of the queen's genetic lineage, they are one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. They have some of the greatest military might and that has ever been seen in the galaxy. And most of the clan members are zealots and will do anything for the glory of their clans of the lineage.
Hold on. I'm getting a download from Ashtar Galactic Command. Jesus Sananda is actually tuning in now. So it's like, yeah, it's like source, trust me. And again, I know I'm making fun, but it's just,
I added this because I wanted to add fun that people may have never even heard of about what people think.
Bro, the detachable dick sword, that's like everything you could ask for. Imagine beating somebody with your own. Right?
This guy tries to rob you. You're like, wait a minute.
That's part of making a homunculus. You beat the cow carcass with the biggest dog penis. Maybe they're alluding.
Tell to Billy.
Maybe they're alluding to reptilian penis swords. Who knows, right?
It's just weird. Let's just finish this thought. So they have been this chief enemy of all of the races in past conflicts. And Alex Collier does talk about this, not this part, but he says that the strongest warrior, no one can take them out or go against them in conflict, so they have no reason to change. And again, we're talking about supposedly hydrogen breathers versus oxygen breathers and the three spinal columns. One spine is located ventrally through the stomach, weird, and the other two are located in the dorsally on the left of the right of the body. So it's just explaining how their anatomy works, because supposedly they have a heart in their armpit. Alex Collier says if you want to kill one, he's like, you probably wouldn't be able to. It'd be impossible. But if you were to attempt to, you'd stab it in the armpit, because that's where their heart is located.
Interesting. And so
wait, inside this claw is a jelly-like sac that excretes the various hormones in the substances.
He's a Balchinian.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. And they have to battle in this sex thing where they battle each other, and then it sounds kind of like us at the end of the day. But they battle each other, and then whoever like wins gets the female and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny if you look at some of our culture, though. You know, like
I mean,
it's fascinating. Tom, it's probably not
the goal of, again, this is thinking very superficially, but the goal of, I've heard it put before scientifically, to procreate. That's the goal of, like, that's what your goal should be. Now, some dudes, they only focus on getting women, and like that's all they want all the time. So it wouldn't, again, it plays into this cortex thing that I talked about with Carl Sagan, where that's a part of the brain that houses all those emotions and things. And supposedly, if we didn't have that, we would just act upon our emotion, our urges. So that kind of suppresses that. And that would not be good, right? Because it would be anarchy or whatever. Yeah. And that's interesting that there's the sexual encounters of the fourth kind where these entities interact. And I mean, even in the the story of Genesis, where the Nephilim or the Elohim or whatever, which could kind of be in the same realm of reptilian, hybrid, chimeras, all these right giants and all these things, they would do what? They would have sexual relations with the daughters of men. Now, David Icke talks about, or I'm sorry, Credo Mutwa talks about how there's a reason why that is. And the reason for that being that these entities can have sexual relations with human women. Therefore, there's some human DNA or human attributes to that thing. So what is that hinting at? That perhaps, similar to what David Icke talks about, that we are the reptilians, or that we have some of them in us or whatever, right? That we could come from these things. And according to ancient astronaut theorists, there was, they did a depiction, that one that I showed at the beginning with the green one, right, with the strut. That is supposedly a depiction if the aliens, if the dinosaurs had survived and evolved, that they could have evolved into this humanoid.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, because that's the Smithsonian thing. And like, it's funny because like it would have been very fine to do on a video, but before we started doing video aspects, we did a whole, this is what got us banned from Facebook. Is there was we did a sexual encounter with aliens episode, and there was a woman, and she wasn't nude or anything, but there's aliens with their like fake dicks out in the photo that I used, and it got taken off. But we talked about how in depth of like how many women truly believe. And we did this. We also did one about ghosts. A lot of women believe they've had sex with ghosts and aliens, which could be interchangeable to the same thing. And they come into this realm. David Icke talks about this, of this woman that supposedly, this is kind of pumping up his ego a bit, but how like this woman was dating this guy, right? And then they're like, it was always rough in sex and stuff like that, and too forceful. And then he was over at the apartment one day and saw a David Icke book, and then she saw him shapeshift as he was getting angry with her. And and of course it's like kind of like, I am a, and I've always relayed that story because I always think it's funny that he kind of obviously pumping up his ego, and it's like you bring someone in their house and they're like, is that a David Icke book? I don't like that guy. And then like you see them like shape shifting and stuff, and it's like, who knows if anyone is telling him the truth or is he telling us truth, but I like the dude.
Yeah, so the idea, right, a lot of these people, it's funny how many people don't know about crop circles, and also these cow mutilations.
We did an episode on that.
Yeah,
I want to do a cow mutilation episode of cattle.
The cow mutilation phenomenon is very interesting, because let's say that these alien greys are a creation of these reptilians, and it's always sexual. They're always probing people. They're taking they're draining the blood of these animals. A very weird stuff. Like, what are they using the blood for? If you're taking it somewhere. So, and who are these greys? If they are created by these reptilians, are they working for them? Are they doing their dirty deeds, like in that movie Jupiter Ascending, where these alien interdimensional things do the dirty work
before we did this?
Do the work for these higher up archontic, right, reptilian kind of people, right?
Dude, there's a game that just got released. You should play it for your audience, especially on Patreon. It's called The Gray Hill Incident. Obviously taken from Barney and Betty Hill, the first people that were recorded in like a whole thing about them being abducted by aliens. I started playing it, and it's pretty cool, dude. You're with your son, and you're like in the house, and all this weird stuff is happening, and people are seeing aliens, and then you like go outside looking for your dog, and there's like something in the shed, very much like Signs. And then you walk through a cornfield. It's that goddamn cat again. That's funny. You still have that. I can't believe that. That's so funny. And so you go and you literally see your son get abducted through, like, you're running through the cornfield. You should check it out. It's very cheap. I think the people of your show would really like to see you play it. And like you have to like hide from the gray aliens and stuff like that and go through the neighborhood. And it looks pretty cool. Like, it's not like terrible, the graphics aren't bad, but it goes into all the lore where you show up this dude has a little trailer, like an RV, and he's got all this stuff in it, and he's wearing a tinfoil hat, and he makes you wear a tinfoil hat. And then they have all this stuff on the wall about the Betty and Barney Hill case. They have a lot of different people, like the footage from supposedly the military that has been released of UFOs. And it's funny because I feel like they're like kind of showing us a peek into, and that's what they've always done with pop culture, is kind of showed us somewhat of the truth, but not the accurate truth.
Oh, 100%. And the gray aliens. Let's talk a little bit about how maybe we are part of these things. Let me pull up I have the excerpt here. So, right, gray aliens, we have gray matter within our brain. So maybe, right, maybe it's suppressed in our thing. And then you have these people who are, right, if they are the accounts that you just talked about, if they are channeling it, similar, again, I'm going to talk about Crowley because he's the one that channeled ayahuasca and all that stuff. And how he said that perhaps that was his subconscious, like talking to him, like this inner monologue. What if these people are tapping into that our cortex, right? This thing that's maybe perhaps being suppressed, because you brought up serial killers earlier. And there's something weird about serial, almost like a spiritual type of thing. Some of them believe that, and even cults. And cults are a real hot thing right now because you have all these shows coming out of how to be a cult leader, the cult of Pete, or whatever it is. So the idea that perhaps these things are a figment of our imagination. But again, back to the interdimensional aspect, I'm one that I believe that there's this idea of the mundus imaginalis, or the abyss, or the Mauve zone, or the upside down, that maybe the portal to that is us, our mind, right? And we're able to access
like a tulpa kind of thing, where you create it from your mind.
What kind of
reality?
Where you can and you can manifest it, or you can tap into it, bro, where you can, scry into an aether or other dimension and see it, and also open up portals, because part of all this is ritual, right? Ritualistic behavior. A lot of these serial killers, there would also do rituals, like Dahmer with an altar. You had the other guy, the creep, the one with the Satan, she's like, oh my God, he goes,
Richard Ramirez.
Richard Ramirez. That
and then
guy.
you have who was it? Gary Ridgway. I think it might have been Gary Ridgway.
So what if he said what if these serial killers
cult was like controlling him?
What if these serial killers and cult leaders, because there's also a cult leader that the reptile cult leader, I have it pulled up here somewhere, the reptilian cult leader.
I need to talk about that on my show. I think I know who you're talking about.
What if they're tapping into, right, or this our cortex or whatever isn't suppressing those ideas of wanting to sacrifice and kill people and do all these bad things?
That's where the whole like stuff of kids and stuff and all the traffic. I don't know. There's some deep shit with that and disturbing.
So I wanna segue this into the Robert Monroe encounter.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. Let me know when to dive in, because I have some cool stuff about
because let's say that when people get together, and usually I've covered this before. I've covered the Crowd by Gustave Le Bon, and it's a book written in 1880 something. And this is a scholar. This is a guy who is known as the father of crowd psychology. And let's say that certain frequencies, right, how you mentioned at the beginning 5G and all these different things, let's say that certain things unlock this aspect of our mind. Now I'm getting into the idea that maybe we are the reptilians, and the reason I'm saying that is because, to quote Ike, we are the reptilians, and the demons at the same time, we are those they manipulate, because we are all the same I, and that's in the Children of the Matrix. So
I have that. I'm reading that book right now.
What is he hinting at? Again, if let's think outside the box. If these things are aspects of our psyche, Carl Jung, right? The subconscious is a thing, the dark self, right? The ego and all these different things. And what if you're able to unlock them through how Monroe is doing with binaural beats, certain frequencies, certain visuals? So that would make back again to the crowd. That's why at certain concerts and riots and all these different things, people act a certain type of way, bro. What if you're resonating at a certain frequency? Yeah, like you're resonating at a certain. They're having amnesia and stuff, bro. Like who knows if they're implanting memories? Like you wouldn't know. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot more to this aspect, and some people even say that reptilians possess people. So,
Well, have
know?
you ever heard of the interview with Lacirta? I think that's her name. But there was this. It was on YouTube. I was like, I've been fascinated by this stuff since I was like 16 or 17. Like as soon as I discovered David Icke, started reading his talks, I found Alex Collier, and then as soon as when YouTube was a good place to be, and there wasn't so censored, you can find the most obscure information, and they wouldn't censor it because they gave people the freedom to talk about whatever they wanted to. And it was supposed to be an interview that was transcribed by a guy that interviewed this reptilian woman called Lacirta.
I think I saw that.
yeah. It's like it's in robot voices. It's hard to get through, but I've listened to this twice in my life. It's like 2.5 hours long. And she talks about how in a crowd of like 100 people, this is like David Icke talks about this. They're not shape-shifting a physical object into a physical object. Like when Jesse Ventura and his son did one of their episodes or whatever, the conspiracy theory about reptilians, and he confronted David Icke at one of his speaking tours or whatever, and he's like, show me a reptilian. And then David Icke's like, I can't show you one right now. What do you want me to how do I show you one? And he's like, I want you to show me these lizard people. And he just couldn't. He's like, I can't show you this. So it's the idea they manipulate our consciousness and our minds are so easily malleable. They're easy to form and manipulate that they can just convince you. They use this like hypnotic technique where she said in a room of 100 people, I look like a beautiful brown-haired lady. But she's like, the less people there is, the harder it is to manipulate their mindset. And then because this guy interviewing her saw her as her true form, if she tried this technique to manipulate his mind to see this beautiful brown-haired lady that everyone seems to see when she's in public, that it would cause him to have an aneurysm. Like his mind would break, because it's like that. Remember, I showed you that thing we're talking about, like the flowers. It's like 3 flowers, and if you look at it, it just looks like 3 flowers. David Icke brings this up also. And then if you look at between it, it says the word sex, and once you see the word sex, you can't unsee it,
bro. So I'm just thinking, like, what if the true form of this lady, right, like it would break your mind. I'm just thinking of you like in a wig, and you go, it would break your mind, and it's just like it's just you as like a woman.
That's what all these. I'm not gonna say anything more about that. Look at our society, man.
You're talking about something that's making me think of Lovecraft, because the idea, right? We're talking about other interdimensional entities, these things that are on the outside of space and time, of reality. Maybe they're manipulating our reality, and the idea that in Kenneth Grant, he talks about the elder gods, and maybe the elder gods are these things that exist outside and they use humans for their bidding, right? Almost very reptilian-esque, right? On this same note of higher archons or higher entities, whatever. But the idea that in our waking state, if we were to witness them, they would look grotesque. They would drive you insane. But in this deep sleep state, this other dimension or other realm, these things can appear in other forms, and therefore it won't drive you to insanity. But if you were to encounter one of these things, and back again to this lady, let's say that it wasn't a hoax. I had that the comment on the viral clip that I had that got, I think, over a million views. So I think like 1 million on Facebook and like 400,000 on Instagram.
That's crazy on Facebook. I'm surprised that they let that.
The comments were straight up ass. I mean, people were just calling me all sorts of things, and people, but it shows you that 99%, because I make the mistake to think about that all people are into this weird craziness. Not everyone is into this craziness, bro. Like,
I get called a fascist and a Nazi and stuff just for calling out the government all the time. It's very weird.
So it just made me think of that when you're talking now about, she, and I have heard of that. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but it makes me think of the people who go, I'm a werewolf. You just can't see my true form, right? Like, like they're outside.
In the city I work, okay, get this. This is just a funny thing. In a city that I work in one of the schools, they have a litter box for one of the students in the bathroom. This is how far
I heard that was fake, bro. I heard that was fake.
No, it's real. I know. No, it's completely real. In Canada, it's in one of the schools in a town called Woodstock. It's real. I know, like, a buddy's sister works at the school and saw it and was like, very bizarre. And the things that they cater to nowadays, right? But
so let's say that we are the reptilians, okay? Let's say we are the Greys and all this stuff. Now, I want to get into the Monroe Institute because Robert Monroe encountered a reptilian race during CIA interdimensional.
Did he? I didn't know that. His book
Yeah.
is fascinating. It's a little racist,
So
though.
I tried the tapes, the Hemisync, and I mean, it's bro, it's meditation. It's
Did it do it? Did you find it did anything?
Yes, yeah, I did. If you
I've done
follow
binaural
it,
beat stuff, and it's
no, but you do this, and then you relax, and you start to home, and then you just right, and then they're playing these beats, and it you feel it, bro. You feel it, okay? I'm sure if you do it enough times,
send me that. I would.
I'll forward it to you. So, closely monitoring the Astral Explorer's groundbreaking finding was the U.S. government. One day in 1978, so mind the date. Representatives from the Central Intelligence Agency contacted Monroe, high-ranking officials inviting him to join a highly classified military project. And it's funny because I've heard accounts of
Terrence McKenna.
These deep underground military bases where they have alliances with reptilians, right?
And they have Dulce base.
And they have Nephilim, and they have giants, and they have access to all these different things underground and military. You have the Collins Elite, right? Yeah. The secretive group that knows it's like a spiritual warfare type of thing. So they wanted to implement his mind-expanding practice in attempts of sending soldiers into deep remote viewing sessions. Should subordinates succeed, America would have a huge advantage over Soviet enemies. Now, this is like how they have in Stranger Things, where she's remote viewing the Russians and all these. And
they're telling us that they're doing this, and that's why it disappointed me. We're like, of course, like stupid Terrence McKenna with his stupid voice, and how he was part of the CIA. And I was like, because I heard Alex Jones
allegedly
like making fun of him, and I was like, why is he making fun of Terrence McKenna? And then I looked it up. I was like, yeah, he's part of the CIA.
So troops could be catapulted into past, present, and future timelines, or even the multiverse. Given Robert's extensive background, various patented applications, he was the perfect choice, right? You have the God helmet as well and all these different things.
Oh, yeah.
And so, since those involved were opening portals to other dimensions, researchers aptly named the assignment Gateway Process or Gateway Project. According to the declassified, the program is a, quote, training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres.
That's cool. So, you bring that up,
so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere, so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of space and time. The participant then gains access to various levels of intuitive knowledge the universe offers. So it's like, again, this like John D. and Edward Kelly were scrying and doing seances and entering altered states of consciousness to talk to entities on the other side. So that's what they were doing here. Now, detailed information about the nature of reality. Investigators ascertain we live in a holographic universe and waking life is a projected electromagnetic matrix. Experiments open portals to other dimensions where reptilian humanoids reside. So
you do, because if you're ever wanting to get into this down the road and do a full extensive episode, because we were talking about doing Project Gateway or Gateway Project like down the road, even just because it's like fascinating. And Robert, like his book is fascinating. I've read pieces of it on the internet like years ago, but it's cool. Like I believe that we know the military and in the intelligence agencies were doing stuff like this.
Oh,
eventually,
100%.
when I dive into MK Ultra, that shit's like there's so much to it. You can't even do episodes on it because it would take all day.
To enter the unearthly realms, headphone-donning voyagers sat in an isolated darkness while listening to various tones of specific hertz. Participants had no contact or communication with one another. After their journey was finished, volunteers would report what they experienced with staff members. According to Robert, subjects would often encounter interdimensional entities. Most frequently witnessed were reptilian humanoids. Viewers referred to the uncanny creatures as alligators due to their crocodilian features. Curiously, Monroe was already quite familiar with the unsettling breed. During countless expeditions, he observed identical saurian creatures for over 35 years. The etheric investigator gathered insight about these startling beings. And supposedly, right, they exist on this other dimension. They feed off the loosh, which is what Monroe called it. And negative low vibrational energy is essential to their survival. So they're kind of parasitic in nature, and they are as smart or smarter than humans. Now, this would allude to the idea that Ike is talking about. Mind you, this predated Ike, right? Because
Yeah, 100% did.
this predated
He
Ike.
really didn't start getting into this until the 90s.
And check this out, bro, because there are CIA documents, and check this out. Look at this little.
It said homunculus. I saw that.
Yeah, you saw it, right? The
What?
Yeah, bro, in your brain. So the cortex homunculus.
Look at that face that he drew.
Yeah, bro. So they're talking about the nature of reality. Now, this is called.
So they're kind of doing astral projection in some cases.
Yes.
I should tell you, let me tell you a little just a very quick story. My buddy Brett that I'm introducing to the show, fascinating cat. He's never signed to a social media thing ever in his life, never signed to anything on the internet. Guy doesn't trust anything. His dad is in his 50s and the most awake person I've ever met that is in that generation ever. He's constantly researching stuff. He's like, did you hear about this? And we're talking about like things like Phil Schneider and the reptilians and all this stuff. So Brett dated a Wiccan. Okay. They taught him how to astral project. And I believe this kid, and he went into an astral projection and he got through and was like walking around his house. And then he felt this, I heard this knocking at the door. And he had this weird feeling and kept hearing this knocking, constantly knocking, wouldn't stop knocking. And then, which is crazy, he like woke up and his dad was like, who the fuck is at the door? And he woke up out of this astral projection and his doorbell was ringing nonstop. And his dad opened the door and nobody was there. And the Wiccans, the chick he was dating, his mother, her mother was also like a Wiccan and super into witchcraft and stuff like that. And she told him that if he opened the door, he would have let something into his physical form that would have most likely taken him over. Isn't that fucking? I believe Brett. This guy is no type of dude. And he was like, it scared the living at me and my dad. And now he's like, my dad heard, he pretty much, as soon as he put his hand on the door handle and went to open the door, it stopped. Isn't that wild?
I got told recently to not have a welcome mat because you know that vampires need to be welcomed in. Well, if you have a welcome mat,
me chills, dude.
All the time you're inviting certain things into your house that could come in of their own free
I want to
will.
do an episode about psychic vampires because that is like fascinating to me.
Yeah, I believe in psychic vampires 100%. I believe
that should give me chills, bro.
So the idea that the government is interested in tapping into these other realms, altered states of consciousness, and then maybe perhaps interacting with these reptilian beings on the other side. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe Carl Sagan is CIA asset. Maybe this other guy, McLean, right, with the R complex is also a part of, right? So to push this narrative, because, right, we have the dinosauroid. Right? What a weird word, dinosauroid. Yeah. So by this Dale Russell guy, and it talks about how the possible evolutionary path of this certain dinosaur. Now, I know some people don't believe in dinosaurs, right? National Museum of Canada, bro. It's over in your neck of the woods.
I know. That's the first dinosaur bone was supposed to be discovered in Alberta, I think.
Look at this guy, bro. He's slaying it, dog. He's slaying.
He does look like he's got swagger, though.
So think about it, bro.
Swagger.
Let's say that let's just think outside the box. Let's say that there was these reptilian dinosaurs, because that's what they really were, right? They were reptilians. And let's say that this cataclysm happened, they went underground. And what if they survived? We know that there are entire ecosystems underground. And there are entire forests, entire oceans, under oceans. The idea that maybe something evolved enough to become this thing, and this is the one that they showed
beings on. Too. There's like frog creatures. I even said that in one of my hip hop. I was like, you see features of a frog and stuff like that, because like that's what people believe that they saw in some of this. It's fascinating. I got interesting. If you want to dive into something more about how we're stuck in the prison, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to talk about the reptile cult and how you know
the snake worship and stuff. Yeah.
No, the reptilian cult. The lady that just go. You go.
Okay. This dense physical world is caught in a manufactured time loop. in which time is a circle constantly repeating itself. Obviously, note the symbols of infinity is the snake swallowing its own tail, right? The pentagram and the 5-pointed star, so prevalent in Satanism, is also a symbol of this unbroken time loop of the vibrational prism. This period we are now experiencing has therefore been played out. We are just at the point again in repeating the circle, like a rat running in these wheels in the cage constantly over and over again. No matter how fast it runs, it keeps covering the same ground. What we need to do to break this time circle is thus in this prison, we need to we are now part of the circle that is actually vulnerable to the vibration and changes. And supposedly, like it makes sense in the whole like reincarnation stuff of like getting, and that's supposedly, I've heard about this, that the reptilians have had a web over the world, some sort of like some sort of web over the world, some sort of energy web. And then you get shot back down in your body each incarnation, and they can have a food source, quotations, for infinity till as long as they want. And this is interesting. With a background in psychology, author Barbara Hanclough, whatever, excels in shamanic cosmology, and is supposedly she's a storyteller technique that integrates supposedly like history, legend, and myth using her own internal guidance. In the third volume of Mind Chronicles trilogy called The Signet of Atlantis, she tackles the problem of the lizard race from her own perspective. She refers to the physical incarnation of this race on Earth. The Anunnaki, they nevertheless have received a measure of control over this planet surface. She writes, most notably, they have achieved the ability to incarnate. No longer will they have to persuade the people to build temples in order to link up their own control centers. No longer will they have to require to channel to enter Earth. Now they can become humans themselves. The various non-physical lizards creeping around all these different places like the Baalbek are considered to be attracted to the idea of taking human form through this incarnation. She continues, they look forward to creating fear more directly. These monsters are not content to lumber around as fourth-dimensional reptiles, occasionally eating up somebody. Much more appealing to them is the idea of actually entering the third dimension in the 20th century, for example, actually becoming Adolf Hitler, Charles Manson, Stephen King, and making the 20th century film that creates fear and the act of eating, The Night of the Living Dead. There's a lot of like, this was fascinating when I looked up this, because this is like cool because of the cool in the way that like they're showing you stuff that is actually happening and feeding off your fear. They even openly show themselves and who they are in creating a movie or shows like V and other sci-fi themes of aliens and reptilians on Earth, including The Arrival, They Live, and Alien Resurrection. It's fascinating because I agree with her. If this is possible, then they're it's boring to exist on the outer realms. Imagine if you could just incarnate in somebody's body here, and they figured out how to do that and take over certain people's forms. People throughout history, influence the time, the place. Like my prime minister is probably.
Well, according to Gnostic cosmology, the knowledge that the serpent gave to Eve, and the reason that the demiurge, Yaldabaoth or whoever, insert whatever god there, didn't want them to eat from that tree was because the knowledge that they would gain was that they were entrapped in a false matrix in this reality. And so, and I think that's still existing even today with like the Oculus and VR, because they want to overlay a reality over our
within a reality. Oh man.
So, and this gets into the idea of, I want to talk about the idea, right? So reality.
Yeah.
And when people think about these theories, you might think of schizophrenic person, right? I know a schizophrenic person, and they tell me that these things talk to them, and there's entities on the other side that talk to them. They show the one that I know about. He talks about how they show him a screen, and on that screen they put stuff like memories of him, and they show him things. Now I don't know if they prophesize or anything to him, but again, that's just from the conversations that I've had. And there is this thing called Capgras delusion or Capgras syndrome, which is a psychotic disorder in which a person holds a delusion that a friend, spouse, parent, another close family member, or pet has been replaced by an identical imposter. Now, Some people, right, as of recently, people have been talking about NPCs. Some people don't have an inner monologue. And this thing of there being interdimensional shape-shifting reptilians that are, you know, have an imposter in their place, whatever it is. You have celebrities that are being cloned, right? This kind of thing. And people are believing these things. Now, this is where conspiracies get dangerous because, right, you're staring off into the abyss and the abyss is going to start staring back into you. And this mindset can be dangerous, right? There is the Matrix case where this dude thought his family was out to get him and he killed his family. The Matrix case. Like there was a dude who in 2000, I think it was 2005. And there's been
someone
numerous...
shouted us out to cover that. The one guy, I can't remember his name, that thought that his mother, his priest or something was a reptilian.
So
and then killed him.
This brings me to and there's numerous reptile murders, if you want to refer to them as. But the one I'm going to talk about is Sherry Shriner. I don't know if you've ever stumbled across the bizarre story of Sherry Shriner's YouTube cult and the murder it inspired. So Sherry Shriner, conspiracy theories about reptilians, aliens, eventually led to a 2017 murder of Stephen
talking about this
Meneo by his girlfriend Barbara Rogers, and she was sentenced to June 10th, 15 to 40 years in 2000.
We don't know. We're just like debating 15, 40, maybe 50. Like such a big span.
Sentenced June 10th to 15 to 40 years.
Yeah, that's weird.
In 2019, this was 2019. So this Sherry Shriner, right, that was talking about supposedly she would talk about these reptilians, and so people call me a false prophet, says Shriner. Out of every 4 humans, only 1 is real. We are at a critical mass. So,
whoa,
she's, mind you, this is at the.
I'm covering this.
The reason I'm talking about this is because we're talking about how all these shows on Netflix are coming out, How to Be a Cult Leader, right? And all these weird shows, right? They cover Dahmer a lot. They cover the Heaven's Gate cult. What's the one that castrate themselves?
Yeah, we covered that. That's fucked up.
She had
Marshall Applewhite, man. He believes like in all sorts of crazy.
She had over 20,000 YouTube subscribers, all devoted to exposing shape-shifting politicians. I mean, that's not the first time we've ever heard about that.
Nope.
And Vice did a documentary on it that's really good, The Devil You Know. Shriner eventually came to believe in the notion of a new world order. The conspiracy theory suggested that everyone from Queen Elizabeth II to Barack Obama were shape-shifting lizards whose alien overlords were hell-bent on world domination and had placed them in power to establish a one-world government. With YouTube and Facebook, Shriner found a massive reach for her bizarre theories. In addition to self-published ebooks and YouTube videos, the self-described servant, prophet, ambassador, daughter, and messenger of the Most High God launched more than 10 websites like thewatcherfiles.com and orgonblaster.com, drawing in thousands of gullible devotees. We've been seeing it on a massive scale, said Shriner in 2016. Celebrities, news announcers, even people in commercials. Everybody you see on TV, about 90%, is a clone or a synthetic robotoid. One of her followers was Kelly Pingley, whom Shriner convinced at 19 years old not to waste the last days on Earth with college and work as a transcriber for her aliens in the news radio show instead. Pingley was told the only true God was Yahuwah and took routine trips to New York to protest the New World Order. On December 28, 2012, Pingley was found dead from an overdose of 30 sleeping pills while wearing an orgone pendant. Orgone was a pseudoscientific substance Shriner claimed could defeat clones and synthetic robotoids. After Pingley's death, Shriner sold replicas of her pendant online. Shriner claimed Pingley had been murdered by a NATO death squad for believing in Yahuwah and urged her followers to stay vigilant in the fight against world domination.
That's fascinating. I'm definitely covering this whole case. That's fascinating. I didn't know about this. I'm surprised I didn't, actually.
And again, I mean, aliens, reptilians. She's even got a Bible quote in there. Very Ike-esque.
Yeah, I had that in my notes too. Just to allude and point towards like some of the, the stuff to do with the New World Order and how it's just like,
Sherry Shriner's conspiracy theories about reptilian aliens eventually led to the 2017 murder of Stephen Meneo by his girlfriend Barbara Rogers. Stephen Meneo and Barbara Rogers were satisfied members of Sherry Schreiner's online following, but things soured when Rogers published a trivial Facebook post about enjoying raw meat, and Schreiner began branding her as inhuman. There's only certain types of people who crave the raw meat because they crave blood, said Schreiner, those with the vampire demon in them. Mineo became convinced that Schreiner was a fraud and uploaded 5 videos between May 29th and July 1st, 2017, trying to expose her. Schreiner and her loyalists essentially cast the couple out and continued to label Rogers a vampire witch reptilian super soldier. On July 15th, 2017, Mineo and Rogers went to a local bar and drank until 2 a.m. before returning to his apartment in Tobyhanna. He took Rogers out back to shoot his gun in the woods. When they went back inside, he asked her to shoot him in the head. She admitted to shooting Mineo at his request, but said she didn't know the gun was loaded. She was offered a guilty plea deal for third-degree murder, which carried a sentence between 10 and 15 years, but turned it down. Meanwhile, Sherry Schreiner claimed online that Rogers had morphed her huge teeth out and revealed her inhuman shape before killing Mineo. She said Mineo hated me because I warned him she was going to destroy him, and she did. He just couldn't believe she would do that.
You know what's funny? The chick that I was reading about, and then when I just kind of made the statements about, her name was also Barbara. Just maybe it's a thing to do with Barbara's, because she mentioned something about how it's called the World Management Team, is what she calls it. They call themselves the New World Order. The World Management Team is
Galactic Command.
Yeah, we did an episode about Ashtar. That was fun though, but I don't know about Ashtar.
Yeah, no, we covered that 2 times, didn't we? Yo, is that your end or my end? You getting a phone call? Ooh, they're listening in on us, bro. I'm hearing the...
That's weird.
Yeah. So this lady, again, they were part of this cult. They were both followers of Sherry Schreiner. And let's see here, interview, being cult leader. I don't run a cult. You can turn on my video, turn it off. You can turn on my podcast and turn it off. I don't have a list or membership rule. And so people who are at a certain frequency, in my opinion, that are not NPCs. I'm not saying that they're NPCs. I'm saying that they're of the NPC mindset. Okay. And by me saying that is that maybe they're more susceptible to programming by the masses. So, and that's why when people would ask me about like, hey, are you being serious? Like when I posted about pigeons being fake, a whole bunch of people hit me up. I'm like, yo, it's a joke. Yeah. But the problem is that people can't discern between a joke and reality.
No, they can't. And that's why we say so many outlandish stuff on my show, and we're like kidding. Like Billy says some horrible shit, we're kidding. It's a joke, right? And that's why my whole motto now is like, on the show was take nothing seriously. And I say that all the time because I'm like, whatever, if anyone wants to come back and try to cancel me or do anything like that, I'm like, I didn't mean anything. Take nothing seriously. I didn't mean anything I said. And that's the whole idea of people, they can't. Everyone is so hell-bent on being offended by everything. It blows my mind. It's funny because remember that reincarnation stuff. I was looking back in this Barbara hand clow. And it's
Barbarous too, right?
It's something weird with Barbara's, man. Barbarella.
Shout out to Barbara's.
Barbara. I knew one Barbara in my life in high school, and she was a loser, like the losers of losers.
Tom. Come on,
I know. She was in the slow class, I think. The Anunnaki selected women to have sex with so they could actually birth themselves into the incarnation cycle of Earth. That is true. And anyway, so you manipulate someone to like have sex. It's supposed to be there's something that never had occurred before, according. And prior to this time, she contends that all sex is very natural. Easily managed electromagnetic fields of your physical bodies and the vibrations of the moon, sun, and planets flower through the Kundalini channels, and you were drawn to each other by planetary affinities in your birth charts, and merging was easy and pleasurable. Sex with the Anunnaki was forced and unnatural. So many ways, because of these few energies, like being affiliated, it became you became confused. While the gods felt the Kundalini energy for the first time, they loved it. The male gods even had sex with a lot of others, and few female goddesses, once they found out what sex was like, what they felt it on Earth. And that's what kind of plagues the idea of, like, it does allude to what the is going on in our society now, and the fact that so many people are so controlled by their sexual nature. It is very bizarre, considering where you see where our society is going and how many laws and legislations they are pushing to have everybody accept this mental delusion of being controlled by your root chakra, in my opinion. She writes, all the imbalances between men and women today come from an energetic imprint of incompatible energy fusion from these ancient times. Your loathing for the reptiles also comes from this phase of your own evolution, because the embodied Anunnaki were very reptilian, and those Anunnaki were the ones that could mate with human females. And there's people, right? This idea that people, like even my fiance's mom, is terrified of snakes. So this idea that you actually take on fears from a past life or your ancestors and stuff like that. Fascinating though, because I'm like, who knows if that's true, but it's interesting.
Definitely. And so, I know we've talked about some pretty dark stuff, and there is a solution,
yeah,
according to David Icke. And the solution that he puts forth is that the only thing that'll overcome these things, that'll liberate you from these potential reptilians, and that they might come over and make you, right, commit a murder because you believe that you are reptilian, or that somebody you know is a reptilian and they've been taken over, is love, right?
Yeah.
We've always been taught about love because,
Yeah.
right, how you're talking about these things want to birth themselves into incarnation. Well, I've also heard that they're also jealous about us and our creativity and all these different things. So
I've heard that too. So if I can draw something from my mind onto a piece of paper, I can draw fairly well, right? Not everyone can. And so I've always heard this idea is, right, if I draw something just from my mind onto a piece of paper, they cannot do that, but they can take my drawing and manipulate it. And that's why you see our society, how they can take things from humans and then manipulate to for their greed or everything. Even because you're getting into this about, like, this is almost the end of my notes, is like, why does this spell continue? Obviously, the shedding of blood through satanic ritual murders and wars replenish the energy that they supposedly feed on. Negative emotions like fear and hatred are another source of their so-called power. The reptilians manipulate from a lower fourth dimension, the so-called lower and astral frequencies, David Icke writes, and to control this planet, they have to keep the mass of humanity at or below the level and disconnected from anything higher. And that's why I don't believe in God. And I believe that there could be one almighty being that thought reality and creation. That's possible. Who knows? I've read The Law of One. It's fascinating material. And so who knows about that? But I always say, like, I pray to my higher self. Whatever that is, I connect to people that are above this, myself that exists beyond this reality. It must be very sad to be an atheist in this modern day age. But, crucial to maintaining the human psyche is disconnect. You're disconnecting. Your ignorance is easy to manipulate low vibrational frequencies and emotion, fear, guilt, resentment, dislike of self, and condemning others, in which all, like, and then they expresses all this fear. It's funny because, like, it makes me think, just like, especially how far society has gotten and how there's certain groups of people that, like, hate everything about the world and hate everything about themselves, and they need to alter themselves in different ways to feel good. And it makes me believe this stuff more, that they're influencing culture and society and people to become so just so encapsulated by their own self-image and their own ego and stuff like that. And you see it in society, people screaming at each other over the littlest of differences and stuff. Divide and conquer is a very real thing.
So
I got a very fun thing to end this on.
I want to end it with the idea of don't be a piece of crap. Treat each other well, treat each other good, love each other, spread love, and all these different things. And I think that if, according to this lore, if it is true, and there are these reptilian overlords that thrive off of fear, anxiety, and all these different things that we've seen throughout history with the with wars and all the bad things of the world, if we're able to come, we have to start by coming together first.
I agree.
And loving each other before we can overcome those things. And if we're able to overcome that,
agree.
then therefore we would snuff out these reptilian overlords if they are metaphysical, if they are spiritual, whatever it is. Because one of my favorite Bible verses is, it's not a war, again I'm paraphrasing, a war of flesh and blood, to a spiritual war, right? And the principalities of good and evil in the higher realms, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a spiritual war.
I try to show that to people, because the karmatic laws of like that were, if you just, I've always said this to people, this goes beyond, because I'm a victim of my own folly. I'm a hypocrite. Everyone I think is, and I scream on the internet about my opinion. It gets shared thousands of times and stuff like that, and people resonate with some of the shit that I say. But at the end of the day, as soon as I do mushrooms, I'm like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I want to delete all my accounts. I don't want to be doing this of like just giving my opinion out to the internet, right? But I always try to point to people that like we're agreeing to this stuff by them showing us all they're doing, the World Economic Forum, whoever it is, reptilians, the government. We're agreeing to it by not doing anything and just sitting subservient. To end this on something fun but fucked up. Did you know Jim Jones is a reptilian? The cult leader that made people drink the cyanide, the Kool-Aid, and Flavor Aid. So Jim Jones, the charismatic leader responsible for the Jonestown massacre in Guyana, which eventually we'll cover on the podcast. It's very deep. There's so much layers to it. Was closely connected to the CIA through his life and was a test strip, supposedly out of the way, for some of the implant and mind control techniques created or imported into the central R&D, research and development facilities under the Colorado's San Luis Valley. Weird, trucks going off. See A&E's investigative report on Jim Jones and his connections to the CIA, which I have to bring this up when we cover him. Jones himself was a high-level Shiraka, the one that I was talking about earlier, a winged reptilian from Orion, his home of these creatures. He was courted by both state and federal government leaders for his abilities and actually served in a number of different positions for various civic leaders. He was described by some who knew him as having totally black eyes behind the dark sunglasses that he wore indoors and outdoors. I wear my sunglasses
because
at
it was
night.
tweaking, bro. That's probably why.
Yeah, that's what they think. Like Hitler shaking in that, and when he was at the Olympics
bro.
or whatever. So supposedly guidance has never let me say this publicly until now, but the wraparound dark sunglasses are the favorite of the reptilians here on Earth, since their eyesight is sensitive to the UV rays of our sunlight. Yes, when you look at many famous people, they're almost ambiguously always wearing dark wraparound sunglasses, worn both at day and night and indoors and out, which is funny because you see celebrities at events and stuff like that, and all these like movie premieres, and they're always wearing sunglasses. The lights are bright. Yeah, sure. And understandable that those that do wear these type of glasses as well are probably reptilians wearing the sunglasses because of the energy fields and that people are able to pick up on them. But weird. Supposedly, yeah. And that's the same chick, Barbara Hand Clow or whatever, says one of her books.
Shout out to the Barbaras.
Yeah, the Barbaras, and that's supposed to be they wear dark suits and it's blue ties, red ties. Look at the red ties have become an ambiguous thing around Washington D.C. Supposedly it's the resonate because colors, right? You've known, especially with your research and symbolism and stuff, as colors and pick up on frequencies.
Absolutely, yeah, that's
fascinating. I heard about him being a reptilian a long time ago, like years and years ago, and I was like, that'd be something funny to end it on, because like people are like, he's wearing sunglasses, he's hiding his shape-shifting eyes, you know.
Yeah, so again,
that was fun.
We covered some of the aspects of the reptilians.
There's so much more.
Not saying this is all of it.
No.
This is gonna be, we might bring it up later on, we might revisit it, who knows, but
100%.
Again, I just want to talk about it today because it's been hot topic in the media. And yeah, do you want to plug your stuff real quick again for the people at home where they can find you?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Even on my show, you can go back there now. I've changed the names where they're just like the main episodes. Me and Juan used to run a series called Strange Ones, and a lot of the older episodes are on Patreon. So patreon.com/Strange Brew Podcast. There's a bunch, and there's still tons of episodes on the main show of me and Juan doing a bunch of different fun episodes. When we first started this, podcasting game kind of thing. But strangebrew.podcast on Instagram. Help us beef up those numbers. We lost our original account. I appreciate everyone subscribing on YouTube, Strange Brew Podcast, and then Twitter and stuff is Strange Brew Cast. But you can find us anywhere you find a podcast. We're also on Rumble at Strange Brew Podcast. BitChute is a weird thing with a bunch of racists, but it's fine. I posted one of our episodes about the evil Nazis, and oh man, Nazis came out of the woodwork to tell me how I was wrong, and it was wild. I had to take it off because there were so many people being like, yeah, BitChute is a little different than all the other apps, but we're everywhere. I appreciate you if you subscribe, give us 5-star rating reviews. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. And for those listening to this, if you're listening to this on YouTube, it's the only place that it's going to be censored. So check it out on Rumble or Rockfin, or I don't think
I will be on Rockfin soon. I gotta set that wallet thing, but
I don't know if I have BitChute or not. Now that you brought it up,
I just did it because it was in case I was like very worried about YouTube censoring everything. I will be on Rockfin soon. I literally have just not made the wallet so I can get paid if we create content. I will be on there soon. I gotta look back at my emails to get that guy's contact.
I don't think
we'll
I'm
be on there soon.
On BitChute. Yeah, I'm not.
It was just in case. It was in case. That's literally what it was.
But I am on Odyssey and I am on Rumble, so check that out on there.
Too, yeah.
And yeah, this was fun.
This was fun. I enjoyed it.
On the next one. Bye now.
We've spared no expense in our search for new testing areas. I mean,